Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Untitled Chapter.
Strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hi, and welcome back to Foster Care, an unparalleled journey with Jason
and Amanda.
Today we're talking with MaryRose Maloney. MaryRose Maloney is a foster parent coach I found online, and I thought, I don't really know what that means, but it actually sounds like the sort of thing that makes sense, right? Because, like, we got kids in football, right?
Yeah.
We've had kids in cheerleading.
Yeah.
And then soccer.
Yeah.
And a few other things I can't remember because we have, like, 1,000 kids. But every one of them has had a coach.
Oh, yeah. Wrestling, 4-H, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, all that stuff. And so I was thinking we're doing this foster care thing, and obviously we stepped right into it knowing everything we needed to know, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, maybe not so much. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know that would have been awesome to have somebody help lead us through it. We unfortunately chose to, like, bang our heads on the wall trying to figure this stuff out. So I am excited to talk to somebody who knows how to help people get started in this world and help them through the struggles. How are you doing today, MaryRose?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We are doing great. The kids are quiet.
For the moment.
They had lunch. They were happy. It's been a great day.
That's a blessing. That's
Amen.
great.
And only parents with kids know I guess all parents have kids.
Yeah.
But we're the ones who know how that truly is a blessing. Some people still live in a house where it's just a husband and a wife.
What?
Yeah.
Quiet.
When you come home from work and it's just the two of you. And we don't have that in our world. As a matter of fact, we have trauma that shows up at our house and hangs out for a while. And, MaryRose, I'm just curious, what brought you into this idea of being a foster care coach? Because that's such a brilliant sounding idea. I can't believe I haven't heard it before.
Well, it's funny that you say that you were, banging your head against the wall and that's how you kind of figured things out. Because I actually hear from a lot of foster parents a similar thing like, oh, I could have used you, 5 months ago or a year ago or, whatever. So I could have had your insight because I just, had to make my own mistakes and figure it out. And I was a case manager for about 2.5 years. And that's kind of what I saw, especially with new foster parents, is just a lot of things that they just didn't know. And I actually ended up taking the foster parent training class, even though I'm not a foster parent myself. And I realized that there's so many things that are just like completely missed in that class. And so that was kind of the start of it. So when I would have like new foster parents that I'd work with as a case manager, I'd actually spend a lot of time doing things similar to what I do now, like helping them understand the back end of the system a little bit better, helping them prepare, for court. Because we do, I think nationwide, it's, kind of an expectation that foster parents will or can advocate in some way for the kids in their care. And it's stressful for a lot of foster parents to do that. So I'd coach, unofficially coach a lot of foster parents through that back when I was a case manager. And so that's how it started. I just kind of decided to turn that into a job.
That's great. I know the first time we went to court, and Amanda, for some reason, they always want to say, foster mom, do you have any questions? Do you have any, they'll ask her questions, and I'm sitting over there like, hey, this guy over here, I'm here too. But it's so often the foster moms, and Amanda was there, and, the court made her a little apprehensive, a little nervous.
For sure.
And
a lot nervous.
Personally, I don't get it. I'll stand up in front of a room of anybody and talk. I don't care. So it's easy for me to stand up and do that. But I know a lot of people have some apprehensions about speaking in front of people. I recently heard, that the fear of death is considered the greatest fear for most people. Like the biggest fear. It's bigger than the fear of dying. you would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. I mean, I don't know. That's not me, but a lot of people have that fear. It's a big thing.
Sure.
So how do you help people figure out how to stand up and not only say something, but know that what you're saying is going on record in a court document? You've got judges and lawyers and caseworkers, and if you're standing here as a foster parent, there's probably a bio parent listening intently to every word you say, and depending on who they are, maybe even pulling that apart a little bit, trying to figure out how they can blame you for something. Because where there are some great bio parents, don't get me wrong, they're not all horrible, but there are some who are really looking to twist your words around a little bit. So how do you coach people through that kind of a fear?
So it depends on the person and what they need. So a big part of it is preparation. So if a foster parent comes to me, needing help preparing for a specific court hearing, then we work on, what they need to say and what they want to say for that specific court hearing. Because obviously the more prepared you are, the better you'll feel, presenting and saying what you need to say. And I think a lot of foster parents are mostly apprehensive because there are things that they might say that you're right, like make some people, maybe the judge or the case manager kind of go, ooh. And if you know that foster parent, they're coming from a good place, and that, their intention is to say this, then it's fine. But when you're in a courtroom with lawyers and a judge and a bio parent that may not like the words coming out of your mouth, then yeah, it's like every word that you choose is, oh my goodness, is this going to upset someone? Is this going to upset someone? And because I have so much experience in the back end of the system and just being in court all the time, I kind of have an ear for those phrases of, ooh, that may be taken this way, and let's see how we can, rework the wording so that you sound a particular way. A lot of foster parents come to me and they're like, I'm not anti-reunification, but I don't think that mom's ready, but I don't want to be that foster parent, that foster parent that people think just wants this kid all for themselves and just hates bio mom and whatever. So I help foster parents portray that they're not that foster parent. So that's part of what we work on, especially if there's a specific court hearing. And then if it's more just in general, just a general anxiety around court, then we kind of work on some fun, I think they're more fun tactics to work through that. So we do things like, creating a routine the night before that it's your go-to routine before every court hearing, creating a morning routine. I created this one thing for a client that I just love, where she picked a scent, she was really into essential oils. So she picked, a blend of essential oils, and I told her, wear the blend of essential oils when you do fun things first, like go for a bike ride, hang out with your husband, cuddle, your foster daughter, do all these fun things, and then take that scent, and that's going to be a scent that you bring with you to court. So you can rub it on your wrist and smell it, and it'll automatically make you feel happier, calmer, and that'll kind of set your mind up to go into the courtroom not as anxious. I have all kinds of little tips and tricks like that I bring out for different clients.
No, I was just saying that sounds like a really neat idea. Scent associated with good memories is memories from when they're little, grandma cooking something specific. And
for sure,
that's a really neat idea. Really thinking out of the box.
Well, yeah, they say that the sense of smell, I'll get it out of my mouth. It's one of the most powerful senses. It brings back a lot of memories. And so I wouldn't have even thought about that. I love the idea of the morning or the nighttime routine. I'm in this dad's group that I talk about all the time on here. And but one of the things we talk about a lot is just morning routines. I don't know if you're familiar with Hal Elrod and his book, The Miracle Morning.
I think I've heard of it.
He has an entire routine, it's a 6-part routine. And for the people who know about it, they know all about savers and what it means. And the idea, though, is that you start your day a specific way and you take that into the evening and end your day a specific way. And it helps to prepare your mind and your body just to get ready to have a good day, and it sounds like you're doing exactly that. almost using the same mentality, the same psychology of what Hal Elrod's talking about, but taking it to a foster parent who's about to do something that might be fairly stressful for them. So that's a great tip there.
Exactly.
What else do you see as far as the key phrases that people want to avoid saying in court? You know, what triggers the workers or the judges? Because that's ultimately who we're all trying to talk to, is the judge.
I should have come prepared. I can't think of any off the top of my head. You know, it's one of those things when you just hear a certain sentence, you're like, okay, that could be twisted, you know? Think of an example maybe from a client I've had recently. So I had a client recently who, it was a re-removal. So this particular child that she had in her care, she had before. Child was removed again. And so the advocacy right from the beginning needed to look a little different than it normally did, right? Because like normally you start out I hope that this parent can get it together. I hope that, you know, like she can get this child back and I'm like on her team. But she already has experience seeing a pattern that still has not broken over a number of years. So we kind of went into, you know, what are you going to say at the next court hearing? And she, because I've worked with her for a while, already has an ear for some of those things. So she would say something and then correct herself. But something that she said, I would probably just say, you know, those negative thoughts in your brain that are just very, you know, the ones you wouldn't say out loud. Sometimes you never have those.
Oh.
Me neither.
Right. Perfect here.
Of course.
I just say them out loud.
Well, and that's the thing is sometimes, you know, they do come out loud. And so if you were going to say like, well, how about you give me one? How about that?
Well, I can give you a real world example. We had a little girl who struggled with eating, you know, with issues around food. She was always hungry, always wanting extras, always wanting seconds, always wanting another portion. And so I had to really be careful how I mentioned that in court, because one of the things that I know is that if I say the right thing the right way, it sounds like I'm saying this kid is not being taken care of. She's being starved. And I know that that's going to bring about, it sounds like I'm trying to point a finger and be really super negative. Right. So I was very intentional with the way that I said it, but I don't think her biological mother necessarily felt like I was being as intentional about it. She still, to some level, seemed like she felt like I was trying to attack her.
For sure. Yes, and especially with biological parents, you know, they have a lot of stake in the game, more so than a judge. You know what I mean? They have a whole child or children that they're terrified most of the time to lose. And so a lot of times bio parents are going to be defensive regardless of what you say. But I think saying things in a way that the judge, the case manager, even maybe the bio parent's therapist, in a way that kind of, you know, seems, I guess, correct to them is helpful. Because even then, if bio mom goes to therapy, right, and her therapist got the idea from you that you were being intentional and that you weren't trying to say like, oh, this child's being starved and, you know, bio mom's a terrible mother, this therapist can help bio mom understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, because in this particular instance, I don't think that she'd been starved or anything. We've actually had kids come to our house who, one little boy came out eventually that he got a cup of water a day if he was good.
Oh, wow.
And he could rarely be good enough. And food was a real scarce thing for him. And it was her form of punishment for him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when he came into care, he was 3 years old, if memory serves. And he was wearing clothes that were at least a year and a half too small for him. And they were loose. You know, wow. he was very malnourished, and he had been treated that way. And that all came out through the course of the case. But I don't think this little girl's not been starved. She's not been, you know, she's not malnutritioned, but she has some issues around food. And so I was just trying to make sure that, hey, here's a thing that you guys need to know about. Like, this is a thing. And it's real.
sure.
And it's something in her life. And it could cause problems later on down the road. And I think it's important for me to tell that part of it and say that, hey, this is a thing that I want people around us to be aware of, so that as she moves forward, maybe she can get some therapy, she can get some help, or we can work through it. But just so everybody knows the whole story. But it wasn't an accusation thing. But
Right.
like I said before, sometimes I just say it. And and I think to some extent it came out in the way that she heard me talk, because what you said was, I think, really poignant, that they, she got defensive. And when I said something, it appeared to spark her defensiveness. It's that fear that sparks the amygdala and has that reaction from people who aren't taking the time all the time to take a minute and slow down and respond, especially when they're afraid of something like losing their kid. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yes, I think a lot of bio parents go into court and automatically get into like fight or flight mode, which again makes a lot of sense. Like, there's that fear. So it's hard to listen when you're in fight or flight mode, which we see, of course, in kids in foster care as well. There's a lot of things that I see in kids in foster care that if you take them and you realize that the adults, not even just the bio parents, but foster parents, case managers, everyone, the adults in the room also were children at one point, or have I don't know if you've heard of like an inner child. There's a lot of things that can apply, because I think foster parents, or at least the good foster parents, think a lot about like, okay, what is going through this child's mind? And we can actually use those same skills to think about, okay, well, what's going through bio mom's mind, bio dad's mind, everyone else that's involved.
It's a big part of what what the parents and the kids experience. There's a lot of fear in there. Have you ever worked with the kids much as far as that's concerned, or do you work primarily with the parents? I mean, I'm certain as a caseworker, to some level, you dealt with the kids.
Yes, definitely as a case manager, I had a lot of hands-on experience with kids. I unfortunately had a lot of kids on my caseload that would disrupt placements and be between placements quite often. So you kind of, as a case manager, become like almost a temporary foster parent, foster parent for a day or for a night sometimes, So I did work with, the kids in care a lot.
How did you work with those kids when they were in their own place of fear? Did you find a good way to help them work through that?
So, sometimes things go well and sometimes they don't. So I'll say sometimes, yes. Sometimes I found ways to work with kids for sure. A lot of teenagers, I'm on the younger side of the majority of case managers. So a lot of times the teenagers on my caseload, or even the teenagers on other people's caseloads who are, in my same unit, would kind of identify more with me. And I would identify more with them. And so I think just having that empathy that maybe is easier to have if you've been a child more recently is really helpful. And so the way that, people who haven't been a child in a while, I think can kind of get on that same level is to think about, like, when you were 10, like, okay, when I was 10, I was in a 5th grade, whose class was I in? You know what I mean? Picture yourself as 10 and then picture, okay, what if this happened to me? How would I feel? And that is, that's an easy way to get yourself into that mindset and to really get on that level and connect.
Well, are you trying to say that some of us here might not have been a kid recently?
I don't know.
As my son would tell you, Dad, you're old. You don't get it.
But that's the thing, is that we all were kids at some point. So you totally can get it.
We can. Unfortunately for them, sometimes we get more things than they want us to.
Yes, that's true.
But that's always been a challenge, I think, for a lot of foster parents, is making that connection with kids. and figuring out how to have a kid look at you and realize that, hey, this guy over here is just another human, and we've had some of the same experiences, and we can have a relationship between us that doesn't have to be quite so positional. You know, that's one of the struggles we've dealt with a lot is understanding that difference between positional authority and relational authority, because most foster kids do not have that relational authority with you figured out because you don't have a relationship yet. They just showed up at your house maybe a day or a week or, you know, a couple weeks ago, and they still don't trust you. How have you helped foster parents build that trust with kids?
That's a great question. How have I helped foster parents build trust with kids? I think it really is just encouraging them to be empathetic. And, you know, something that I've seen again with teenagers a lot is kind of this desire to push, like this desire to, oh, like I really want you, even if it's just, I really want you to talk to me about this issue because I really want that relationship with you and I really want to help you work through things. You know, sometimes that push can become too much and we need to just back up and give, you know, kids their space and they'll come to us. That's especially true with teenagers. But I think it's also just especially true with kids in care because, like you said, they don't know you. So they need time to observe from a distance and make sure that you are like safe and cool and not like just someone that wants to get their story out of them and they don't know why.
Oh man, I'm in trouble if I need to be cool.
Not cool like, you know, chill. Calm.
I don't know. I've been told enough that I'm not cool. I'm starting to believe it.
I think we get told we're old more than anything. You're old, Mom.
You know, I told my mom that a lot as a kid too.
Yes. I've learned to just appreciate the blessing of being old because the alternative is a little bit grim.
Yes, true.
And I don't think at 12 or 14 or 16 you quite get that yet. But yeah, that's some great advice. Learn how to just take a step back and not be right up in the middle of trying to force a relationship because that rarely works with a kid. So when it comes to the foster parent's ability to keep from breaking a placement, because I know you said you saw a lot of placements get broken. How do you help foster parents, or, you know, what are ways that foster parents can really focus on staying with a placement that may be challenging so that you're not breaking that placement and causing more trauma in the long run?
So the biggest thing that foster parents need is support. I'm sure, I mean, I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you know that. So the biggest thing that I work on with foster parents right up front is who's in your network of support. It's in my questionnaire that I send to new clients, because that's what I want to know right up front. Who's in your network of support? How do they support you? Who do you go to when you need advice? So that's normally, you know, a more experienced or just another foster parent. Who do you go to when you just need to cry it out? You don't want any advice. You just want to cry. Sometimes that's, you know, that's grandma, like that's foster parent's mom or foster parent's best friend. And who do you call when you need a break? And that's the biggest one. Who do you call when you need to leave the house? Because obviously you can't, with younger kids especially, just up and abandon ship. So who do you call when you need that? And the foster parents that have someone always do much better. The foster parents that are, you know, in it alone, that's who I've seen break a placement. That's not always the case, but that I think is the major thing, is just not having someone that can come over, you know, in an emergency, or at least can come over this weekend, you know, to give you a break.
Now, what about the parents who are, say, you know, out in rural Utah or rural Missouri, where we happen to be, and you don't have a whole lot of people around that fit that category? People you can have come watch the kids for a while, because, you know, with our past, Amanda was working ridiculous hours. I was working ridiculous hours. We didn't have a whole lot of time to build relationships with other people and other family.
Sure.
are there any online groups or does that sort of support, I think, to some extent help maybe not take the place of it, but at least help you to find your own place of calm so that you can continue forward?
For sure, yes. And I'm actually working on developing a group program right now that I'm hoping can kind of serve that same purpose. Obviously, like I can't come through the phone or the computer to you and, watch your children for a while, but we can create this space of calm, where maybe you put your kids in front of a screen for an hour, which I tell foster parents all the time, screens are not evil. I think a lot of parents put pressure on themselves. Oh, my child can't be in front of a screen, or only an hour a day, which is good. Only an hour a day is good. But if you need 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours in the time of COVID, however much it is for a day, it's fine. That's not evil. So you can put, your kids in front of a screen for an extra hour and still get your break that way, and still, come into a community and a space where you can just kind of calm down, talk it out, be real about it. You don't have to be so, I don't know if buttoned up is the right word, but you have to act a certain way in front of your children, and you can't just say, "Oh, you're such a little but you can call your best friend and be like, "Oh my goodness, they're just being such a brat today. I can't stand them." And so if you can, park them with maybe some headphones, some noise canceling headphones for a bit, and kind of just come into a space where you can relax and get it out. I think that's really helpful too.
Yeah, again, back to that part where I just say it sometimes.
Hey, and I mean, all parents do. That's where apologies come in.
Exactly. I think that's a big piece of it, that learning to realize when you stepped outside of your bounds, because God knows I've been there a time or two, and I've had to go back to my kids a time or two and say, hey, you know what? Yesterday you were kind of in a bad mood. I was not in a good mood either. And we kind of butted heads, and you were kind of being a jerk, and I responded as a jerk as well. I shouldn't have done that. Apologized to them. And, that's a skill set that I don't think we're necessarily born with.
No, not at all.
That's not something that's easy for us to pull off. But for me, that's been helpful when I've been able to do it.
Yes, for sure. It is. And it's a skill that you have to work on. We're definitely not born with it. I come from a psychology background, studied psychology in college. And I couldn't tell you like what the principle was or what part of your brain it is or anything like that, but you're definitely not born with it. You're not born with having any kind of other perspective other than your own, and you do have to work on that, and you do work on that a lot through just having relationships with other people.
Yeah, that's one of those difficult things that I think a lot of foster parents struggle with is finding that empathy in those moments with a kid who may be like just totally losing their stuff, right? I mean, if you've been around kids in trauma very long, you've seen a kid lose their mind.
For sure.
I have one particular kid that we could both remember the fits when he first showed up at our house that would last for 45 minutes to an hour at a time, and it was blood-curdling screaming that, I mean, the only break that was there was on the inhale. That was it.
Yeah.
And it was 45 minutes to an hour of nonstop. And that was hard for us.
Oh, it was hard, especially because we had never experienced that before. That was our very first placement too. So we were totally unprepared, unexperienced. And I mean, in the end, we just had to ride it out with him and be where he was at the moment. And that was the best thing that we could do. But man, it took some time to figure that out because, I mean, we had been parents before. We had biological children, but we had not experienced that level of trauma before.
It's so different.
And how that manifests. And at first, the first time I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I broke it.
No.
But I was so unprepared. He taught us a lot, and he's becoming a great young man. But even now, coming into later teenage years, that trauma revisits, and sometimes the feelings come back, and, you're just left unprepared.
For sure.
I know you said you had a psychology background. I can only imagine that you probably had to have had some sort of conversation in school about trauma.
For sure.
what kind of advice can you give to foster parents who are listening about how to deal with trauma? Because that's such a big topic.
Yeah, that's a huge topic. For such a broad topic, I'm going to give a broad answer, which is just study as much as you can about it. Read as much as you can. Listen to as many podcasts as you can. Different trauma is going to present in different ways. So there's really not even a general statement that I can give. Like, reactive attachment disorder, RAD, how you have to act as a parent for a child with RAD is completely different than, how you might have to act as a parent for a child that doesn't have any trauma. So it's kind of a matter of like, one, helping identify what is going on with the child in your care. And that might be advocating for evaluations, keeping track of any kind of symptoms or behaviors that you're noticing so that you can get accurate information about what might be going on with them, and then just learning all about whatever that is and how, what's worked for other parents. That and just patience. I mean, it's hard, but trauma, the only thing that heals trauma is relationships. That's it. We can medicate our kids. Don't get me wrong, a lot of our kids need medication. We can medicate our kids. We can put them in therapy. But the only thing that's actually going to heal any trauma is having a stable relationship with another person, with an adult. And that's hard. And I think that's hard for a lot of foster parents to hear because it does just take patience.
Who could you recommend for people to look up books, any particular books or authors or online resources about trauma that you've used in the past?
I would definitely say, and I feel like you guys talk about him on a lot of your podcasts. I know we talked about him on the phone the other day. John DeGarmo, I just always start there. He has access to so many resources about different things. There's a ton of books, of course, none that I can think of the title of off the top of my head.
Yeah, Dr. DeGarmo, he is the director of the Foster Care Institute, if I remember right.
For sure.
Yeah, he does every day, or is it every day during the week? There's like an hour or something. He answers questions. You can, it's an online deal. You type in your question and he answers them, and he does it like an hour a day. And
yeah, on his Facebook group, which I wish I could tell you the name of. I'll have to tag it in the show notes because I can't remember the name of his group right now.
I would get it wrong if I quoted it, so I'm not going to do that.
I know that I've learned a ton off of YouTube just looking at videos from Karen Purvis.
Mm-hmm.
She seems to be like the godmother of all things TBRI. For anybody not familiar, that's trust-based relational interventions, which is more or less has a lot to do with exactly what you're saying is learning how to build that trust and build a healthy relationship between the child and an adult. And,
sure.
And build that relationship so that you can intervene inside of their trauma response.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a lot of resources out there to be able to find some help with that trauma. That's been something that we've had to learn because we came into it. You are probably a little bit younger than me, at least a bit, maybe more than a little bit. But I was raised in the generation that said, suck it up, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
Be a man. Men don't have emotions. And for those of us in that age bracket, my wife is obviously much younger than I am, so she wasn't there, I'm sure.
Nope.
See how I keep myself out of trouble here. But I mean, for people who are raised in that age bracket, I mean, what would you say to somebody who was raised with that idea, who believes that just suck it up and move on is an appropriate answer?
Well, I think that takes a lot of self-reflection, which it can be kind of hard to go there with yourself because you have to realize how that attitude and how you were parented didn't serve you in some ways. And not everyone wants to hear that, but you have to ask yourself, if my parent would have attacked parenting differently, how would that have made me feel, and how might have things changed for me? How might my relationship with my parent, change for me, or the way I viewed, myself as a child? And then kind of realize that the way that you were raised, and I mean, I do think, we were raised probably several years apart, but but even my mom, who is a saint, still had some of those attitudes, when she raised me, of just suck it up, or her favorite phrase was "get a grip," which is like, still so triggering to me. Get a grip. I will never ever say that to my child. But you have to realize, like, how that didn't work for you. Get a grip never allowed me to, I never responded to get a grip with, oh, okay, I'm not going to have a tantrum anymore. So you have to think about that and realize that if it's not working, so you have to change it. You have to learn something new.
Yeah, you saying that reminds me that ours used to be get a helmet.
Yeah. I think that was a short version of my sister's phrase, which was "life is hard, get a helmet."
Yeah, pretty much so.
That's funny. I haven't heard that one.
Never did that ever really help. I can't recall a time that, that made my kid be like, oh, all right, I'm going to stand up and behave now. I'm not going to
exactly
this piece of candy or whatever it may be at the time.
Exactly. Even just like take a deep breath may have been better, and I think that's what she meant. Like, just take a deep breath, calm down. But if you can come to your child with an action step on how to calm down, instead of just, hey, calm down, it's going to be more effective.
Well, it always works, especially when Amanda gets upset with me, when I just look at her and tell her, you need to calm down.
Yes, it works really well.
Yeah. She also knows how to swing a frying pan now.
Cast out, baby.
So yeah, you're so right on that, and I wish somebody would have told me that years ago, because our oldest children are around 20-ish now, and our youngest are closer to 5 and 6, and there's a couple in the middle, and the older ones, they see me sometimes when the kids are kind of losing their mind, like kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And I will sit with a 5-year-old sometimes and say, hey, come here, stand right here, take a deep breath. And he looks at me, I don't care if you want to, let's just take a couple deep breaths, and we'll work through this. And then we have a different conversation. And he walks out, and my 22-year-old son, he's married and moved out, but when he's at home and he sees that, he looks at me and goes, where was this guy when I was a kid?
Exactly. And I'm sure that he turned out great. I turned out fine, but it's well, for one thing, it would have just been easier on my mom if she, it probably would have just been easier on you if you would have just had those skills before.
Yeah, because the truth is, I'll tell you where that guy was. He was still being built.
Right. Yeah.
We started off as young parents, and I remember, there were several times that me and Jason, we talk about it now, but when the children were younger, we'd be in the store and there'd be a kid throwing a fit or whatever. And, we were young and naive and we didn't know any better, but we'd tell her what would happen if you did that. Oh, we'd get our butts busted. That wouldn't be tolerated. But that's the thing. We as parents, we judge, and we get judged so critically. And the way we parent our children now to what we did back then is completely different. But I guess what I'm trying to get about is just because you have to parent differently doesn't mean you need to be judged for that. But so often we are. We've got criticism flying from everywhere. Oh, they just need their butt whooped. They need this. They need that. Everybody's willing to tell you what they need, but they're not willing to invest in that child.
For sure.
Yeah, and for foster parents who voluntarily invested in kids, that's something that we have to realize, that investment needs to be more than what was necessarily given to us. We need to really educate ourselves and find a way to invest in that. And so finding people like you who can help us do that is an amazing resource, because God knows there's not a lot of people out there teaching this stuff to people. and especially in the moment when we need it. So, you know, when you do your sessions with your clients, do you help them work through those things?
For sure. A huge part of what I work on is just taking different perspectives, which if you really break it down it's just empathy. So that is a huge, and so we work on, you know, taking the child's perspective, which is kind of like I said, you go back to your own childhood first and try and get in that mindset. And then you work on changing the factors, you know, adding in the factors that the child that you're trying to connect with is going through, what that would have looked like in your own childhood. And that's kind of how you start to get that perspective. So we go through that kind of perspective, bio parents' perspective all the time, because that one can be really hard to get in that mindset. You know, we've all been children, but if you're a foster parent, it's very likely that you were never a parent whose child was removed. So that one's hard. So we go through a lot of perspective things. And that's where really the coaching, like the coaching questions come into play, because it is just like really step by step working through that close your eyes, imagine kind of stuff.
We have teenagers right now that, well, we have a lot of teenagers. We have 3 teenagers in the house. Yes.
Yeah.
I have to think sometimes.
Yep, there's 3 of them today.
And so it's really easy to step into those moments with those kids where they're hitting those teenage moments anyways. And if you're just a biological parent who has teen kids, and they don't ever challenge you and they don't cause you problems, you should probably call a doctor. Something's wrong with them.
Definitely.
So when you take kids who've been through trauma, and I mean, let's be honest, all kids in foster care have been through at least one trauma, even if it's just the trauma of losing their first family.
Exactly.
You know, we've got a little guy with us who's 4, and no, he's 5, and one who's 6, about to turn 7. He told me today, and everything he wants for his birthday as well. He told me that too. But these guys are not going to have a memory of that first family.
If somebody's handing out a Nintendo Switch,
yeah,
he would love it.
Yeah, there you go. Mail that too. Yeah, no, but they, you know, they're still going to have the trauma of having lost the first family, because we're really open about, you know, where they came from and the fact that they are adopted and that they have a birth mother and a birth father out there somewhere. And so they know all that, and they're going to have that trauma of having lost their first family. So that's definitely, like you were saying, that's the added stressors on top of things that we don't understand.
For sure. And even if they didn't know because you told them, that trauma would still be there. There's still something about being removed from your biological parent that just causes a misconnection of sorts. If you follow any adoptees or former foster youth, which I'm sure you do, and you've had, you know, several on this podcast, they'll tell you, like, it starts just in the beginning. Even adoptees that were adopted at birth, like it's still, there's something there that still is a trauma.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Melissa Corkum. She has the Cork Board.
Sounds familiar.
I believe she did a little bit of work with Karen Purvis, but we talked with her, and that was one of the things she really, you know, drove home, is that trauma and how much that changes the brain in physical ways that we can't necessarily see, but it's there.
For sure.
Even if they don't remember it. You know, I think she recommended a book called The Brain Remembers, or The Body Remembers.
Something like that.
I think I'll have to find that and put it in the show notes, but
yeah, that's a good one.
And so the body remembers even when the brain forgets, when you're young enough that you don't remember, because thank God there's parts of our early childhood we don't remember. That had to be a horrifying time for us to figure out what life and existence was. But a kid who goes through that, the body remembers, the brain gets physically changed, and we have to deal with those changes in a different way than maybe we would deal with a kid who didn't have those specific traumas. And that's a difficult thing for us as bio parents, foster parents, adoptive parents, all the way around the board. That's a difficult thing to stay in that mindset and deal with. How do you show parents the importance of that, of realizing that? Because it's really easy to dismiss that.
Yeah, it is so easy to fall into that too. I have found myself starting to type that out in certain situations because it is just like, oh, like, I mean, it's good that someone's parenting them, but like that's not how this works. They're not lucky to be in this situation. But when I do, come across foster parents or clients like that, I point them towards adoptees and towards former foster youth, because I think that, that like firsthand experience and that firsthand perspective is really the only source where you can like really truly start to understand, you know, what it does or how it feels. Yeah, I love Anne Heffron. I follow her on Instagram. I don't know if you've heard of her.
That doesn't sound familiar.
No. She posts a lot of just words, not a lot of pictures, just a lot of words, but a lot of the things that she says are just like mind blowing. Like I never thought about adoption that way. I never thought about a connection with a bio parent in that way. I remember one of the things that I saw from her, like when I first started following her, was something along the lines of, I just wish that my adoptive mom would have had a curiosity about, an open curiosity about my bio mom throughout my childhood. If she would have just asked like, hey, I wonder what your bio mom's doing right now, it would have started a conversation or provided some kind of connection between the two of them that would have been, I guess, more healing for her. And that's not a perspective that I would have or could have even thought about. So I definitely direct foster parents and adoptive parents towards adoptees who really know what it's like.
So I got to ask, what brought you into this world to begin with? What made you go to college with a psychology major or a psychology bend to your education and then want to come and work in the child welfare system?
I feel like it was a culmination of so many things. I get this question a lot, of course, and I feel like I tell a different story every time because there are so many things. Like I did have a friend when I was in elementary school who was in foster care, and her placement did have to disrupt, and she ended up with someone else in my school, I think a teacher or someone. And, she was a friend of mine, and her first foster sibling was also a close friend of mine. And I think just that dynamic sort of opened my mind up to the fact that the world of foster care existed. And then when I was in school later on, my mom was never an official foster parent, but my mom's the type of person that if she sees a need, she has to fill it. Like, no matter how exhausted she is, no matter how many hours, no matter how many hours she's worked that week, she has to fill it. So, there were kids in my school that might need like a place to stay or just a parental influence or whatever, a ride to school the next day. So we just had kids spending the night and, moving in and out from time to time. And I think that also kind of started to create that empathy. And then from there, I mean, in college, I actually went into college as an undecided major. I had no clue what I wanted to do. But I remember talking about maternal mortality rates in other countries. And I was like, adoption. I need to go into adoption. Like there's children in orphanages all over the world. And I started learning things about, orphanages in like Romania and Hungary that were just like nightmares. And so I got really into international adoption all throughout college. And so that's kind of what really brought me into this world. And then I had someone say like, well, why are you so focused on international adoption? Have you thought about adoption here in the United States? And that brought me to apply for my job in child welfare, be a foster care case manager. And then I just fell in love with foster care. I still love adoption, but my heart really is in foster care.
Wow, it sounds like you came from a line of people who had a reason to care about young kids who needed somebody. That's great that somebody like you can carry on your mom's tradition.
Big shoes. She has huge shoes, but I hope I can fill them.
I think that's what we're all trying to do deep down in our hearts, is trying to fill our parents' shoes. So I know you have a program where you work with foster parents. How does that work?
So I have like a one-on-one coaching program that's 6 weeks. And so it just takes a message to me to start a conversation on it. And then, I usually have a call to kind of make sure that I can fit the need for a foster parent. And we can work on all kinds of things. So I tailor make, obviously, every program to the specific foster parent and what they need. We work on things like boundaries. Boundaries, I'm sure are a huge thing. I might even say the most important thing in foster care and in life. We work a lot on boundaries, and like actionable boundaries, creating, steps, not just, oh, well, you should say no when you can't do something, but creating actual phrases for the specific things that are causing you, stress, that you need to set boundaries around. So we work a lot on boundaries, a lot on self-care, which is very related, a lot on advocacy work, which is, what we talked about, like going to court. And obviously there's tons of other ways to advocate: meetings, emails, phone calls. We work on that, and a lot of like just organization sometimes. And a lot of foster parents are like, oh, I don't need that. I'm organized. But you'd be surprised when you really start to look into it, how much simpler you can make your life if you almost automate some things. Like if you just put on your Google Calendar every week, at whatever time on whatever day, I'm going to send an email to the caseworker with just updates and questions. So even if I've sent an email earlier in the week, there's just something bullet pointed that keeps that line of communication open and organized. That can really make your fostering experience so much easier. So we work on things like that as well.
I love that because, as a friend of mine has said a number of times, what gets scheduled gets done. And if you don't put it on your calendar,
Right.
and Google Calendar, it's just, not a commercial for Google. I wish they would pay me to be a commercial for them, but the Google
Right.
Calendar is so very helpful. I have one for me, for a couple different email addresses. Amanda has one. Our kids are our younger kids are doing a virtual schooling thing. So they each have one through their virtual school, and we can share those calendars, and it's so very helpful because we can have that stuff pop up in my calendar when she puts it in, and we can sit down and work on some of those things together. So that's a great way to help advocate for kids because, let's face it, we're all busy. Some of us, I think, are crazy busy, myself included, but we're all at least busy. And that stuff can get overlooked pretty easily because, like right now, we've got a kid staying with us, and primarily we're just holding space. There's a family placement. It's an out-of-state deal. So the ICPC stuff, that if people aren't familiar, it basically means we live in one state. The other placement lives right across the state line. It probably would actually take less time for them to sell the house that they're in and buy a house in our state. And it'd be probably quicker and easier for them to do that than to get through the ICPC process because you're dealing with two different state governments. And I'm not going to say state governments are slow, but sometimes a little, and
Especially
yes.
right now with COVID.
yeah. So we're
Definitely.
sitting in that holding pattern. It's easy to let things go by and forget to do those little things, so that when we do get to court, court is now on, what is it? It's not Zoom meetings. I think it's WebEx or something out here, but it's all virtual court stuff that we're doing, and it's really easy to forget the things that you wanted to say when you're sitting in your living room or your office or your kitchen, and you're just sitting in a meeting for a few minutes once every month or two. So having those things worked out ahead of time could be a great way to kind of plan out how to help a kid the best that you can help them.
Definitely. It's funny that you mentioned ICPC too, because I feel like I hear that all the time. Having been a case manager that had to do ICPC packets, ugh, they are terrible. They take so long. They're not even hard. It's just a matter of like finding so many documents that you might not have access to, and the forms are confusing. And then like so many people have to review it and send it back to you. So it is such a long, huge process. And yeah, it's so helpful. I tell foster parents all the time when they bring up ICPC, it's so helpful if you just stay on a case manager about that. Like just text me every morning, like just make sure it does not fall off my list. It does not fall out of my head. Because yeah, I mean, as my supervisor used to always say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And that is so true. And so yeah, things like those weekly emails really help. Like, hey, still waiting on that ICPC. Where are we on that ICPC? Like,
yeah, I have a forehead shaped dent in my desk from this one. Because I mean, this particular kid's not a challenging kid to have around, but at the end of the day, what we're really shooting for is permanency, and we're not going to be the permanent place for her. I know that. You know, if she goes back to mom, that's awesome. If not, you know, there's a good possibility the family member that where she'll be moving to could end up being a full-time placement, and I would love to see her be able to get that piece of permanency under her belt.
Yes. And as you know, like the quicker that you can get to permanency, the better.
Yeah. So that's some great advice on ways to get stuff like that done. Because I don't know if there's anything in the system that takes more time than the interstate things.
Oh my goodness, they're so terrible. And then just the fact that you have to rely on a different state, like that you can't just go to, that you don't have necessarily connections in. Ugh.
I will say this: if you're willing to really go search and harass people, you'll eventually, you know, figure out the right people to talk to. I'm not going to say I haven't talked to the other state capital about some of that stuff because it was taking a long time, and the other family didn't know how to get a hold of them, and so I just went on a Google search and found a few phone numbers and made a bunch of phone calls, and eventually, you know, things took one step, and now we're quite a few steps along the route. So hopefully she'll find that permanency soon. But that's what this is all about, really, is us trying to find a kid who's in a struggle, who's in a hard place, and then do our part, and maybe not just our part, but do everything that we can to help them become a good, productive member of society, somebody who makes it through this traumatic time without too much added trauma, that we can maybe facilitate that to be a safe space for them.
For sure. It's funny that you y'all are my kind of foster parents. Because it's funny that you say, you know, you made phone calls until you basically made it happen. And I advocate for foster parents to do that all the time. I think a lot of foster parents are afraid of being annoying. And I'm not going to tell you that it's not annoying, because as a case manager, I've been annoyed at foster parents just like you. But it's also so helpful. Like, in the same breath that I mentioned those foster parents are annoying, they're also my favorite because they get stuff done, and that's what we need. So it is, and that's part of what I do too, is just let foster parents know, you know, especially foster parents that are less experienced than you guys, who don't even know where to start on making those phone calls. I let them know, you know, there are numbers out there. If you call your caseworker, their voicemail should have their supervisor's number. And if you call their supervisor's number, their voicemail should have their supervisor's number. And that's a good start right there.
Yep.
Yeah, email is an interesting thing. You know, all you have to do is get one person's email, and it's usually, you know, be like, you know, for me, Jason.Palmer at something, right? And if you know that person's first and last name you're looking for, that at something usually doesn't change.
For sure.
I was actually trying to get a hold of somebody in our state system for talking about a foster care program that I'm working with a buddy of mine, John Williams, over at Life That Counts. And I hadn't gotten an email back from this person who was supposed to email me, but the person told me what their name was, and it wasn't that hard to put a first name dot last name there and shoot off a handful of emails till I got a response and we got it moved forward. And it ended up turning out that the state of Missouri, if this program ends up being funded, this the state of Missouri, the whole state is willing to use this program. So we're able to maybe impact a huge number of kids because it took a little bit of investigating work, and mostly it was just guessing at what the last part of the email address would be the same as the rest of it, and we could get stuff done. But sometimes I think as foster parents, we just need that push to be willing to be the bulldozer.
For sure.
Because as a case manager, I'm sure you know that they don't always have like time to sit back and eat bonbons and watch their soap operas during their day.
I don't think anyone in the foster care world has time to sit back and chill.
Right?
No.
Even as foster parents, you're basically trying to make sure the house doesn't get burnt down by wild children.
Exactly.
That's not just foster kids either. That's our own kids.
Hey, they're all hard.
But yeah, so it's just being willing to be the bulldozer and push through and find solutions for kids. And well, kids like that one, I don't know if you can hear him or not on your end, but I just heard a loud scream. So Amanda will probably be back in a minute. It didn't sound like a terrible scream. As a parent, you learn those sounds, right?
Yep.
You learned it and you can hear that from almost any kid. As a matter of fact, we were at one of our kids' football games the other night, and I was walking out to the car for something because they're allowing certain, every player can invite 2 people so mom and dad can show up. And as I walk out to the car to get something, I see a little boy standing beside the little building that had the bathrooms in it. He's on the end, and he's clutching a blanket, and he has this cry that just catches my attention. I'm like, I know that sound. I turn, and there's a kid sitting there, and he's got a blanket in front of him. He's just clutching it, holding it for dear life, and he's crying. I went, oh, nope, this is a problem, kid. He has an issue. And I walked over and said, hey, buddy, what's wrong? And as you can tell, the listeners can't see, but you can. This is not the face that most young kids you would think would immediately, come to. But I can kneel down and just, change my face a little bit, calm my, what's going on, buddy? And he says through his tears, I lost my mommy. And I'm like, oh, well, hey, hang on. I know there's a police officer over here. Let's walk over here. Let's see if we can find him. And about that time, I heard a noise and looked down. Thank God he had grabbed his mom's cell phone. It was kind of tucked in the top of his blanket. And I said, is your mommy's name whatever the name was on the screen? And he said, yes. So I picked the phone up and answered it and said, hey, is this, so-and-so? She's like, where are you at? I told her, and she was able to come find her son. One of her children had gotten hurt, and in the shuffle, the little one had wandered off. But you learn those sounds of those kids, and you go, yeah. And that's what we do, on a larger scale. But it's those moments in our life that we realize that our goal here really isn't to just make big money and buy fancy cars and houses, and that's our sole goal in life. But it's those moments where you can find a kid who's in their crisis, whatever it is, whether it be being abused and neglected and starved and hurt, or just a kid who lost mommy. And you can go, hey, I can provide you with a little bit of something. And there's so much in that moment that just resonates with me to be able to go, yeah, I helped somebody through a crisis today. And that little boy can never say thank you. It's not about that. It's not about making anybody else feel, think that you're a great person, but it's just about having that moment where you can help someone. And I think that's what this foster care thing is all about.
For sure. Yeah. And it is, once you start helping, it's a skill, and you start realizing like, oh, this person needs help and I can totally help them in this way. You start to get almost, it's like an ear for it or even an eye for it when you're in public, like, oh, hey, this kid needs something, for sure.
Yeah, and we find our ways to do that. And it's great that we have people in this world who look at foster parents like us and go, hey, there's some people out there who need help. Because my God, do we ever need help? So many, I'm not even going to say weekly, maybe daily or sometimes hourly.
Yeah, everybody needs help.
So if people want to reach out to you and talk to you about your parenting or your foster parent program, how would they reach out and talk to you about that foster parent program?
So the main way to reach me is through Facebook or Instagram. So on Facebook, I'm MaryRose Maloney foster parent coach. And on Instagram, I'm just at MaryRose.Maloney. And then I also have an email address, which is MaryRose@MaryRoseMaloney.com. And I promise I'm not obsessed with myself. It's just that's how the branding worked out.
I know how that works. I did that for a while. Our first website was actually my first and last name, and eventually I changed it because I found a better name for a website. But I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, it starts out that way.
All right. Well, I think it's great that you've chosen this route, to help people who are trying to help others. It's something that's just not really out there at this point. Are there many foster parent coaches that you know about?
I've found maybe a total of 3 or 4, but we all offer something a little bit different. And there's no foster parent coach that I've found that understands like the back end of the system. So there's the other 3 have been foster parents, which is helpful in a different kind of way that I can't offer necessarily, but nobody else has like a deep understanding of the system and advocacy and things like that.
Well, we'll change that and we'll get you into the foster care system as well, and then you'll have the whole package, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm always trying to convince people to give it a shot,
Me too.
So, well, it was great talking to you today. I appreciate your time. And if there's anything else that we can do as far as helping you out, I would love to be able to do that. And maybe we can find a way to collaborate on some other projects.
For sure. I would love to. Thank you guys so much.
Nice having you.